Well, you're always going to have a section of society that's not going to pay their fines. I mean, that doesn't stop our enforcement. And as we know, our license is a privilege, and it's built up with our rights or the rules of the road. And if we don't, there's other avenues. If you don't pay fines, or if you debilk us into demerit points, you will lose that privilege to the point where at times it's criminal. We're not the collection agency in regards to that. We're the enforcer of the rules. As you say, part of that is that education. Our ability to stop, educate, enforce those rules, it's looked at in law. When it comes to the collection of the fines for that, doesn't mean that we haven't done our job in regards to preventing a serious collision. And if the courts rule or make some other ruling that, like the other programs that are instilled in putting these people into these courses, or taking away that driving pollution, taking them right out of the society, but not going to go with the flow. I think that's sort of separate with the collection part of it.
A great many of those fines, too, if I understand the story correctly, and I heard what you have, are people from other countries, particularly the United States, driving up here and then leaving the country. So it's another issue, I think. It's an issue of cross-border enforcement, which I don't think has a great deal of bearing on this issue, although, of course, we would like to see all fines, and we would like to see the good work that Constable Smith and other officers like him not go wasted, and that they're, the penalty meets the crime, obviously, in this instance, too.
I'd just like to add to that, in a complete agreement, two things. From personal experience, the motorist that killed my husband had $14,000 in unpaid fines. When we got to court and we learned at trial what his record was, we were moved to approach the government for legislation. In the same way, today, we're here doing the same kind of thing and tabling the idea for some legislation that, notwithstanding the fact that fines go unpaid, and the Ontario government becomes a collection agency for motorists who don't pay their fines and consequently can lose their license, as Constable Smith pointed out, which in and of itself is a hefty fine. And very soon in September, if you drive without a license and you're suspended, your car will be confiscated. So I think what we're seeing is legislators moving to close those gaps where fines aren't the only penalty. And I'd add my voice to those who've already spoken to it, but education and awareness programs, such are the penalties that are included in this legislation, I think provide another impetus for motorists to avoid getting charged with this fine, because it's going to be a cost and inconvenience. If you are convicted of not giving cyclists at least 3 feet when passing, then you'll have to go back to school, you'll have to pay a fine, and you'll have to pay the course costs too. So hopefully that kind of cost and inconvenience in and of itself is another deterrent which will prevent motorists from making bad decisions.
The motorist who killed your husband had $14,000.
Yeah.
And you're talking traffic tickets, not parking tickets.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, I mean, how do you feel about the fact that police wouldn't have been able to do anything if they pulled him over and found that out?
Yeah.
They'd give him another ticket, but...
Yeah. Well, I think we all feel helpless in these situations. The only thing that helps us to cope with some of the injustice that we see around us on a daily basis is to try and make things better. I mean, everyone on this panel, everyone who's across this province who's engaged in building safer and healthier communities, and Yvonne and her work, and Cheri and Hugh and his work, we're all engaged in trying to make the world a better place, at the risk of sounding Pollyanna-ish, but that's the thing that helps us get out of bed every day, is that we can make a difference and contribute and prevent others from losing their lives. I mean, I'd be wrong if I didn't tell you that part of the reason I'm here is a very personal one, because, if that motorist had made a different decision that day, my husband would still be alive. But there's no single bullet to this either, to sort of build on your question. I mean, there's this legislation in and of itself, while important and critical and a very important and courageous first step to pro-cycling legislation in this province, isn't in and of itself the magic answer. That saying about it takes a village to raise a child. There's a multiplicity of impacts that we need to see when it comes to making our society more cycling friendly. And our traffic courts are sometimes far too lenient when it comes to drivers, and drivers as a consequence are far too complacent, and they don't take it seriously, they don't pay their fines. So maybe with this education course, maybe sending them back to school will make them think twice. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what it's going to take to change people's behaviors, but we're going to try, and this is a good first step.
I think on that note, Joe will soon give us the evil eye. We're past our half hour, and I have to go up to question period. Sorry, was there one more question?
Oh, forgive me, sorry.
No, no problem.
I don't know if this has been asked already, but Premier McGinty is apparently saying there's no need for a new law. That's his reaction on this. I just wanted to get your response. I don't know if it's been asked already.
Certainly. Well, would you like to respond, Yvonne or Eleanor? I can say that that there are a number of cyclists out on the front lawn of Queen's Park, that there are organizations here represented, that we have the police here representing the Toronto Police. We're saying something very different. We're saying that it's absolutely necessary. And I think anyone who has cycled in Toronto or any of our big cities or on our highways and byways will say the same thing. Any parent of a child who's going out, whether adult or young, on a bicycle as we speak would say the same thing. And I think certainly you have had Eleanor's very personal testimony to say something very, very different from what McGinty's saying. Yes, we do need a 3-foot passing law, and that's why they brought it in 16 different jurisdictions, or will be 16 different jurisdictions in the States and several European countries, because it's necessary legislation.
And I'll meet with the Premier anytime he wants to sit down with me, and I'm happy. I've discussed this with the Premier already, not this particular legislation, but he knows about my husband. And I'd be happy to sit down with him, and I'm sure Yvonne would join me at that table in terms of taking a few moments of his time to sort of articulate for him the case for this legislation. I can tell you that the current Minister of Transportation is aware of this legislation, is supportive of the idea of clarifying the rules of engagement when it comes to motorists and cycling safety. I don't know, and I'm surprised, and I haven't actually verbally heard it from the Premier myself, I'm only hearing this now, but I'm surprised that anybody would disagree with the idea of making our roads safer for motorists and for vulnerable road users. So that's what I would say to that.
And it doesn't cost anything.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.